The last whisper of autumn clung to the trees, a skeletal embrace against the encroaching chill of November 1978. In the quiet, unassuming town of Blackwood Creek, a place where everyone knew everyone and the hum of cicadas was usually the loudest sound, an eerie silence descended. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of a snowy morning, but a suffocating hush that spoke of unspeakable loss, of a void ripped open in the fabric of everyday life. This was the year the smiles froze, the laughter died down to murmurs, and the collective breath of a community caught in its throat. This was the year Billy Henderson vanished. Billy was just 12 years old, a wisp of a boy with sun-streaked hair that perpetually fell into his earnest blue eyes, eyes that held the boundless curiosity and easy joy of preteen existence. He was the kind of kid who still believed in backyard adventures and the magic hidden in forgotten corners of the woods behind his house, woods that would soon become synonymous with terror. On that fateful Saturday, November 4th, the air had a crisp bite, promising the first hard frost. Billy had finished his chores, meticulously raking the fallen leaves into neat piles, a task he grumbled about, but performed with a diligent focus inherited from his father, a man of quiet strength and unwavering routine. His mother, Sarah, a woman whose warmth radiated through every pie she baked and every hug she gave, had called him in for a quick lunch of tuna sandwiches and milk, a familiar ritual in their cozy, slightly cluttered kitchen. After lunch, the siren call of the outdoors proved too strong to resist. Billy, ever the explorer, announced he was going to meet his best friend, Timmy Jenkins, to explore the old abandoned mill down by the creek. Be home before dark, Billy boy, his father, Frank, had called from the garage, where he was tinkering with the family's trusty Ford pickup. And no fooling around near that mill, it's dangerous. Billy, with a quick wave and a shouted, "Okay, Dad," was out the door, a worn canvas backpack slung over one shoulder, filled with a few comic books, a half-eaten candy bar, and his prized slingshot. It was a perfectly ordinary afternoon in Blackwood Creek, a picture of idyllic Americana that would soon be shattered beyond repair. But Billy never made it to Timmy's house. Timmy, in fact, had been grounded that day for some minor infraction, a detail that would later loom large, painting a stark, isolating picture of Billy's final known movements. Hours bled into late afternoon. The sun dipped lower, casting long, unsettling shadows across the Hendersons' manicured lawn. Sarah began to feel the first tendrils of unease curl in her stomach. It wasn't like Billy to be late. Not like this. Frank, sensing his wife's growing anxiety, made a quick call to Timmy's house. The news that Billy hadn't shown up hit them like a physical blow. The initial calls to neighbors, infused with a forced calm, quickly devolved into frantic, desperate inquiries. The phone rang unanswered, the silence on the other, and a growing cacophony of fear. As dusk settled, deepening the shadows into impenetrable darkness, the true horror began to dawn on them. Billy was gone. The first few hours were a blur of adrenaline and disbelief. Frank, a man of action, organized an impromptu search party with neighbors, their flashlights cutting sways through the gathering gloom, their voices echoing through the woods, calling Billy's name, a name that seemed swallowed whole by the vast, indifferent darkness. Sarah, pale and trembling, clung to the telephone, making calls, relaying information, her voice cracking with each forced word. The police, initially dismissive, treating it as a typical runaway case. "Kids will be kids, ma'am. He'll turn up," grudgingly sent a lone officer to take a report. Officer Miller, a gruff man nearing retirement, offered little comfort, his eyes betraying a practiced cynicism. He noted down the details with a bored air, emphasizing the commonality of such occurrences. This initial, almost casual response from law enforcement would later become a source of profound, festering resentment for the Henderson family, a bitter taste that would linger for decades. Days turned into a week, then two. The leaves, once clinging delicately, now lay in a sodden, decaying carpet underfoot. The air grew colder, biting deeper, mirroring the chill that had settled in the Hendersons' hearts. The woods behind their house, once a playground of innocent adventure, transformed into a sinister, foreboding labyrinth. The search intensified, moving beyond the immediate vicinity of Blackwood Creek. Volunteers from neighboring towns, spurred by local news reports, joined the effort. Hundreds of pairs of eyes scanned every inch of the wilderness, every abandoned building, every culvert. Flyers with Billy's smiling face, a snapshot from his last birthday, were plastered on every lamppost, every storefront, their edges curling in the damp November air. "Have you seen Billy Henderson?" The bold letters screamed, a silent plea hanging heavy in the air, unanswered. The community rallied, initially with an outpouring of support, meals delivered to the Hendersons' doorstep, offers of assistance, hushed conversations in the supermarket aisles. But as the weeks stretched into a month, then two, the initial fervor began to wane. The news cycles moved on. The search parties dwindled. The flyers faded and tore, like the last vestiges of hope. For Frank and Sarah, however, the search never stopped. Every day was a relentless pursuit. Every rustle of leaves a potential clue. Every distant siren a flicker of renewed hope, quickly extinguished. Their once vibrant home became a shrine to absence. Billy's room preserved exactly as he'd left it. Toys on the floor, books on the nightstand. A poignant testament to a life interrupted. Now pause for a moment. If you're finding this story as gripping as I am, please take a moment to hit that like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. It truly helps us bring more untold stories like Billy's to light. Your support makes a real difference in keeping these mysteries alive and giving a voice to those who vanished into the shadows. Blackwood Creek in the late 70s was a microcosm of small-town America. It was a place where kids rode bikes without helmets, where front doors were rarely locked, and where the rhythmic clang of the church bell marked the passage of time. The dominant culture was one of quiet resilience, a strong sense of community, and a deep-seated belief in the goodness of people. Television was still a novelty in some homes, and neighborhood gossip traveled faster than any news bulletin. Kids like Billy spent their days outdoors, exploring the woods, fishing in the creek, building forts that were more imagined than real. The idea of a child vanishing, of a predator lurking in their seemingly safe haven, was an unthinkable horror, something that happened in distant, dangerous cities, not in Blackwood Creek. The disco beats of the era, the rebellious spirit of punk rock just emerging, felt a million miles away from the wholesome, rural rhythms of their lives. For Billy Henderson, his world was an intricate tapestry woven from the threads of school, baseball, comic books, and the endless adventures waiting in the woods. His favorite baseball cap, slightly too big for his head, was almost a permanent fixture, tilted at a Johnny angle. He had a freckle on his nose that crinkled when he laughed, and a gap between his two front teeth that made his smile particularly endearing. He dreamt of becoming an astronaut, a fascination fueled by grainy newspaper clippings about the Apollo missions tacked to his bedroom wall. He was, by all accounts, a typical, happy, well-adjusted boy, deeply loved by his parents, cherished by his grandparents, and admired by his younger sister, Emily, who looked up to her big brother with unwavering adoration. His disappearance wasn't just a loss for his family. It was a wound inflicted on the collective psyche of the entire town, a scar that would never truly heal. As the official search efforts waned, the rumors began to fester, a poisonous undercurrent that crept through the town like a slow-moving fog. In a place where facts were scarce, speculation thrived. Was it a runaway? The police initially leaned heavily on this theory, despite Billy's stable home life and his known attachment to his family. "He's a good kid," Sarah pleaded with Officer Miller, her voice hoarse with desperation. "He wouldn't just leave." But the official narrative, convenient and easily digestible, held sway for too long. Then came the darker whispers. Foul play. Abduction. Had a stranger passed through Blackwood Creek? The town felt too small, too isolated for such a monstrous act. But the woods, vast and encompassing, offered a terrifying anonymity. Some whispered about the reclusive man who lived in a dilapidated cabin on the outskirts of town, a veteran of some forgotten war whose eccentricities were now magnified into suspicious behavior. Others pointed fingers at a recently divorced teacher, his reputation already tarnished by local gossip, his sudden departure from town shortly after Billy's disappearance raising eyebrows. These were just whispers, fragments of fear and suspicion, unsubstantiated and unproven, yet they added to the agonizing burden carried by the Hendersons. One theory that gained surprising traction, particularly amongst the more superstitious members of the community, involved a psychic. A woman from a neighboring city, known for her gifts, was brought in by a well-meaning but misguided relative. She walked the woods, eyes closed, hands outstretched, offering cryptic pronouncements about water and a deep, dark place. Her vague pronouncements offered little comfort and only served to deepen the mystery, adding another layer of unreality to an already surreal nightmare. The Hendersons, desperate for any lead, pursued every rumor, every tip, no matter how outlandish. Frank, a man whose steadfast resolve had always been his defining characteristic, became a gaunt shadow of his former self, his eyes permanently etched with pain and exhaustion. Sarah, once so vivacious, moved through her days in a fog of grief, her laughter replaced by silent tears that fell onto Billy's untouched baseball glove. Their once solid marriage, subjected to the unimaginable stress of their son's disappearance, began to show cracks, the unspoken blame and unbearable sorrow threatening to pull them apart. The months turned into a year, then two. The official missing persons case grew cold, relegated to the dusty shelves of unsolved mysteries. Billy Henderson became a name whispered with a sigh, a cautionary tale. But for Frank and Sarah, hope, however faint, refused to die. Every rustle in the leaves, every distant cry, every fleeting glimpse of a boy with sun-streaked hair would send their hearts soaring, only to plummet back into the depths of despair. They held vigils, not just for Billy, but for the countless missing children whose faces adorned milk cartons, a collective plea for answers in a world that seemed increasingly indifferent. They joined support groups, finding solace in the shared pain of other parents whose children had vanished, their stories a chilling echo of their own. Then, 5 long years after Billy Henderson vanished, a twist emerged from the quiet depths of those same woods, a discovery so shocking, so utterly out of place, that it ripped open the barely healed wounds of Blackwood Creek. It was autumn again, late October 1983. The leaves were turning, painting the forest in hues of fiery red and burnt orange. A group of local teenagers, daring each other to explore deeper into the wilderness than usual, stumbled upon something tucked beneath the gnarled roots of an ancient oak tree, partially obscured by a thick tangle of thorny bushes. It was a backpack, a faded, mildewed canvas backpack. The boys, initially excited by their find, quickly grew uneasy. There was something about its location, its aged appearance, that sent a shiver down their spines. One of them, older and more cautious, recognized the faded, stitched initials on the strap. BH. A collective gasp, a dawning. Horror spread through the small group. They knew. Everyone in Blackwood Creek knew. They remembered the flyers, the hushed conversations, the unending grief of the Hendersons. They ran, their earlier bravado evaporated, to tell their parents, to tell the police. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community, rekindling the old fears, tearing open old wounds. This time, the police response was different. The initial dismissal was replaced by a grim determination. The backpack, undeniably Billy's, was meticulously collected, handled with the reverence of a sacred relic. Forensics, still in its nascent stages compared to today, was brought in. The scene was cordoned off, officers combing the area with a renewed urgency, searching for any other trace, any bone, any shred of clothing, anything that could provide an answer. Inside the backpack, the contents were eerily preserved, a snapshot of a moment frozen in time. The comic books, water-damaged and brittle, their colorful covers faded by the elements. The half-eaten candy bar, now a fossilized lump, and the slingshot still nestled at the bottom, its rubber band long since disintegrated. But what was most striking, most chilling, was the complete absence of anything else. No bones, no other clothing, just a backpack. Its placement, deep in the woods, miles from where Billy was last seen, in an area that had been extensively searched in the initial days and weeks of his disappearance. How could it have been missed? Or, more disturbingly, how did it get there? This discovery, while offering a tangible link to Billy, only deepened the mystery, spiraling it into the realm of the truly perplexing. If Billy had run away, why leave his backpack? If he had met with an accident, where was he? The backpack's condition suggested it had been exposed to the elements for a considerable period, yet it was found in an area supposedly scoured by hundreds of volunteers. The questions mounted, heavy and unanswered, pressing down on Blackwood Creek. The Hendersons, now with renewed, agonizing hope, clung to the backpack as a lifeline. Sarah held it, tracing the initials, the faint smell of damp earth and decay a macabre echo of her son. Frank, his face a mask of grim determination, saw it as a new starting point, a clue that had been there all along, somehow missed. This is where the cracks in the official narrative truly began to show, where the whispers of conspiracy and cover-up started to take root. The initial police reports from 1978, painstakingly reviewed, seemed almost perfunctory. Vague descriptions, missed details, entire sections of the search effort undocumented. How could an item so central to the case, something as distinct as a child's backpack, be overlooked in an area supposedly thoroughly searched? The sheer remoteness of the discovery site, miles from the original search radius, further complicated matters. Had someone moved it? And if so, why? The Hendersons, emboldened by this new evidence, demanded answers. They confronted Officer Miller, now a grizzled veteran on the verge of retirement. His initial dismissiveness from 5 years prior, now replaced by a defensive posture. "We did our best, Frank," he stammered, avoiding eye contact. But his best felt woefully inadequate to a family consumed by 5 years of agonizing uncertainty. A retired detective, a man named Robert Hayes, who had moved to a neighboring town, heard about the backpack's discovery and, out of a sense of professional curiosity and a nascent suspicion, began to informally review the case files. What he found chilled him to the bone. Not just incomplete reports, but seemingly missing files. Crucial witness statements that had vanished. A logbook detailing the initial search grid that simply disappeared. It wasn't just negligence. It began to feel like something more deliberate, more sinister. Hayes's discreet inquiries ruffled feathers within the Blackwood Creek Police Department. He encountered stonewalling, evasive answers, and outright hostility. The small-town police force, a tight-knit brotherhood, seemed to close ranks, protecting its own, guarding secrets that had been buried for too long. Was there a cover-up? Was someone in authority protecting a local, a friend, a relative? The theory, once unthinkable, began to gain traction. The idea that institutional failure, perhaps even corruption, had played a role in the years of unanswered questions was a bitter pill for the Hendersons to swallow. The grief over Billy's disappearance was now compounded by a burning rage at the system that had failed them, not once, but repeatedly. Decades passed. Billy's backpack became a symbol, a haunting reminder of a life snatched away, a mystery that refused to yield its secrets. The Henderson family, irrevocably altered by their loss, found different ways to cope, or sometimes simply to endure. Sarah, initially consumed by debilitating grief, found a fragile strength in advocacy. She became a tireless champion for missing children, her gentle voice gaining a fierce edge when she spoke of official indifference and systemic failings. She founded a local chapter of a national missing persons organization, her own tragedy fueling a desire to prevent others from enduring similar pain. She carried a small, framed photo of Billy in her purse, a smooth, worn worry stone she would absent-mindedly rub whenever anxiety threatened to overwhelm her. Frank, a man of few words, channeled his pain into a relentless pursuit of the truth. He never stopped searching, though his searches became more metaphorical, focused on digging through old records, knocking on doors that had long since closed, chasing down faded memories. He became a fixture at the local library, poring over microfiche of old newspapers, seeking any detail, however insignificant, that might have been overlooked. His workshop, once a place of satisfying projects, became a sanctuary where he retreated, meticulously organizing every piece of information, every lead, every dead end. On a corkboard that grew to cover an entire wall, a spiderweb of theories and unanswered questions. Every year, on Billy's birthday, he would quietly visit the spot where the backpack was found, laying a small bouquet of wildflowers, a silent conversation between a father and his lost son. Emily, Billy's younger sister, grew up under the shadow of her brother's disappearance. Her childhood was marked by a pervasive sense of loss, a void where her big brother should have been. She clung to fragmented memories, a shared laugh, a whispered secret, a protective hand. As an adult, she pursued a career in law enforcement, driven by an unyielding desire to seek justice, to bring closure to families like her own. She carried the weight of her family's grief, but also their quiet strength, their unwavering hope. She would often visit her parents, poring over Frank's Billy board, her legal mind dissecting the cold case files, searching for the overlooked detail, the forgotten clue. The emotional cost to the family was immense, a silent erosion of joy, a constant ache in their collective soul. Holidays were bittersweet, birthdays a somber reflection of what might have been. The family rituals they once cherished felt hollowed out, perpetually incomplete. Yet, through it all, a fierce love for Billy and for each other persisted. They were survivors, scarred but unbroken, bound together by an unimaginable tragedy and an unwavering commitment to finding answers. They understood that closure wasn't about forgetting. It was about finally understanding, about giving a name to the darkness. Then, nearly 40 years after Billy Henderson vanished, a different kind of truth began to emerge, not with a sudden, dramatic reveal, but with the slow, painstaking unraveling of forgotten threads. In the early 2010s, with advancements in forensic technology and a renewed interest in cold cases, Emily, now a seasoned detective, convinced a new generation of investigators to re-examine Billy's file. The missing documents, the incomplete reports, these were now seen not as simple oversights, but as evidence of a deeper problem. The key finally came from an unexpected source, a deathbed confession. An elderly man, terminally ill, haunted by a secret he had carried for decades, finally spoke. He had been a low-level groundskeeper at the local park in 1978, a quiet, unassuming man who had witnessed something he couldn't comprehend and, out of fear, had remained silent. He spoke of seeing a car, not one he recognized, parked suspiciously close to the woods on that fateful November afternoon. He described seeing a man, a stranger, emerge from the woods, carrying something he couldn't quite make out, but it was bundled. And then he saw the man return to the woods a few days later, a small, faded backpack in his hand, which he tucked away deep in the undergrowth. The man's confession, while vague on specifics, reignited the investigation, giving it a tangible direction it had lacked for so long. Using the groundskeeper's testimony, combined with modern forensic analysis of the backpack itself, specifically trace elements of soil and pollen that hinted at a different initial location, investigators were able to construct a plausible scenario. Billy, ever the adventurous spirit, had indeed gone into the woods that day, but he had ventured much further than anyone initially suspected, drawn by some unknown allure. He hadn't met Timmy. He hadn't just run away. He had, most likely, stumbled upon something or someone he shouldn't have. The ultimate truth, though never fully detailed in a court of law, began to coalesce. The man seen by the groundskeeper was eventually identified through cold case fingerprint analysis from an unrelated crime scene years later. He was a transient, passing through Blackwood Creek, with a history of minor offenses, but nothing that would have flagged him as a serious threat. It was a crime of opportunity, a chance encounter in the vast, indifferent woods. Billy's backpack had been deliberately moved, not to conceal Billy's body, but to misdirect the search, to throw investigators off the scent, to make it seem as if Billy had simply vanished into the wilderness or run away. The lack of a body, the absence of further evidence, indicated a meticulous, if unplanned, effort to erase all traces. The man, it turned out, had died years earlier in prison, a victim of an unrelated violent incident, taking his full confession and the precise location of Billy's remains to his grave. The Hendersons finally had a partial truth, a haunting, incomplete form of closure. They knew, or strongly believed they knew, what had happened to Billy. They understood the mechanism of his disappearance, the cruel randomness of it all. But the final, agonizing piece of the puzzle, Billy's body, remained elusive. The woods, vast and ever-changing, had claimed him entirely, his final resting place forever hidden beneath the shifting earth, the countless layers of fallen leaves, the silent passage of time. Blackwood Creek learned to live with its scar, but it never forgot Billy Henderson. His story became a stark reminder of the fragile innocence of childhood, of the lurking shadows that can invade even the most idyllic of places. The family, though burdened by the lasting pain, found a measure of peace and understanding. They continued their annual rituals, now imbued with a different kind of meaning. On Billy's birthday, they would gather at the edge of the woods, not in despair, but in quiet remembrance, releasing balloons into the sky, their hopes and memories carried upwards on the wind. The haunting truth of Billy's story is not just about a boy who vanished, but about the decades-long journey of a family's resilience, a community's struggle with fear and grief, and the enduring power of love that refuses to fade, even in the face of the darkest mysteries. The woods still stand behind the Henderson house, ancient and silent, holding their secrets close. And though the years have blurred, the details, the memory of Billy Henderson, the boy with sunstreak hair and earnest blue eyes, remains a permanent, poignant whisper in the heart of Blackwood Creek.